Hello, this is Brian Sharifi. Welcome to my case study on Erin, ASPP 204, Applied Mental Skills. So when it comes to Erin, we're going to go over her case summary, questions to be asked, plans for a session, possible areas of need with Erin, as far as mental skills are concerned, priority of list of mental skills, and measures to evaluate the effectiveness of the mental skills, and then my references. So for case summary, we have identifying data. She's a 15-year-old female competitive cheerleader. We know that the mother reached out 7 months after the blockage incident and the trauma that's occurred with the head injury during her tumbling. I think that's relevant background info there. She's been recognized for tumbling, so it's one of her major strengths, although that she's having blockages when it comes to doing that particular movement in her sport. Her mom is her coach, so I think that's really important, the dual relationships there that are played, especially support from family, elders, mentors is really important at the stage of development according to Erickson's model. Identity versus role confusion, which I'll get into in a second. Anxiety and arousal regulation are some of the big things we want to look at because that's what she's seeking consultation. Although I think there's fear of failure, there's confidence, self-efficacy things going on as well in the issue. We know the performance history, she's been competitive since the age of 5. Or started her relationship with cheerleading, or started cheerleading, but competitive since the age of 10. So 10 years in the game, 5 years very competitive. There's the head trauma and the blockage, as I mentioned earlier. Social emotional development. I think there's something to be said about unilateral identity. There's identity crisis going on. Coakley's 1992 model of having your identity tied to the sport. There's something to be said about that from my summary of the case. She doesn't take time off. It's evident there that she, even on her break, she was still practicing her skills. So burnout is a possibility. Likely, she's white, female, English-speaking, able-bodied American. Those are some things that I gathered. Not too much detail there, but I just went with that to kind of give me more ammo to create this case for the mental skills training that we're going to create for her. Questions to be asked. Support systems. I want to know, besides her mom, who's her coach, who she's with all the time, in cheer and at home, who are other support models in her life? Other coaches. More info about the block. Has she ever had one before? How does she manage it before? How does she manage it currently? What are her coping skills like? How is it affecting her personal life? How is she managing her stress and anxiety outside of the sport? What's going on there in her personal life? That's a 15 years old, high school, a lot going on. A lot of changes, a lot of identity, a lot of, social aspects to the person's needs with friends and things like that. Maybe other interests come to mind as well. Relationships, dating. I think that's really important to look at. More info about the block here as well. I want to know how private sessions went in the past because it was mentioned that she's had private training before. What worked, what didn't. It's important to know what didn't work so well. Why are they looking for a new consultant? Just more her willingness to do the consulting rather than her mom's. Like, how motivated is she to put in the work for the mental skills training? Again, a lot of this information too will let me know if we need to refer out to a counselor, a therapist, clinical psychologist, maybe a nutritionist if there's eating disorders. A lot of times that happens in this population with cheer, gymnastics. So those are all things to look at. Questionnaires I administered. I thought the task ego orientation to sport might be something relevant. There's so many ways you can go about the questionnaires, but I just want to know kind of her motives. Is she more focused on the process and competence, performance goals, or more on outcome related things to kind of help me understand kind of her identity ties to the sport? Plans for session 1. I want to keep this in mind for my philosophy of practice going into Erin's case. Sorry, I don't want to block the screen. I want to know what's going on with her identity and versus role confusion. What are her other interests outside the sport? Why is it that her identity is so tied to the sport? Is it because of her mom? Is it because she doesn't know what else to fall back on? Is it because she's afraid to fail? Is she a perfectionist? So yeah, here I reference Kidwell et al. 1995. Found that Allison struggled to find their identity, had more time managing their emotions and feeling confident about themselves in general. So I want to take the whole person approach, and I want to make sure that she's a confident, grounded individual, not just in cheer, but outside of cheer, more importantly. So plans for session 1, really building a therapeutic alliance. Trust and rapport, going back to counseling skills here, making sure that I know the sport of cheerleading. I do some research on the book on Blocked because that's something that her mom has read, probably has utilized in her coaching with her. I'll have to ask that, of course. Understand her motives behind cheerleading. How aware is she of herself, her self-awareness? I know at that age I wasn't very self-aware, and that's a foundational sports psychology skill as we were learning this class. So focusing on that. Tools. I like the ping. It's semi-structured. You can go a lot of different ways with it. It's whole-centered, whole person approach to it, which is nice. It looks into a lot of factors like self-care, how people cope, and it's strength-based, which is a big part of my philosophy of practice, focusing on the individual strengths. Practicing self-awareness, again, that's something that I think is foundational to the work that we do, and the more she understands herself, I think this will help build the layers we need in mental skills to undo the block. So these are some mental skills that we can do already. Mindfulness, breathing exercises, we could bring that into play as we're building therapeutic alliance, and that's something that Erin definitely needs. And that's a kind of preliminary mental skill that we can start incorporating after the first couple sessions. Managing fear, failure, and anxiety is going to be huge. So shifting her negative thoughts. A mental skill approach here would be ABC restructuring. Like, what's the activating event before she tumbles? Does she think, what's the first thought that comes to mind before her feelings and behaviors occur subsequently? And then what happens when she fails the tumble or the movement? What are her thoughts right after that? So really starting to work through those skills right there to understand, are they negative after the fact? Are they negative before? What's really going on here? Confidence building. Again, the thoughts, feelings, behaviors, feelings, thoughts. Self-talk strategies. We know from the confidence lecture in the book, self-talk is one of the biggest skills there in building confidence. So seeing what she does for self-talk, she could do a log here of her self-talk. Rational emotive behavioral therapy. So really trying to challenge your rational thoughts. Really trying to understand what's going through her head and catastrophizing maybe. And a lot of that has to do with her perfectionistic concerns. So utilizing those mental skills, the challenging, the must, the shoulds, the have to. I have to do this, I should, I must. All or nothing kind of approach to kind of build her confidence. Goal orientation, task versus ego, really focusing on tasks, on competence, on building that and rather than ego. Assuming that on the questionnaire, she's going to score really high on ego. But we don't know, I'm not going to assume, but I'm just kind of putting this in perspective if this was the case, and this is what happened. I put a big emphasis on perfectionistic concerns for striving, teaching her that striving for perfection is a good thing, but being concerned about it is maladaptive. That's going to get in the way of her confidence. It's going to get in the way of her anxiety. It's going to cause her anxiety to go up and thus get in the way of this block or continue to prevent her from overcoming the block. Again, other things, visualization could be helpful. Doing a mental status evaluation throughout the sessions to make sure that a referral isn't needed, I think is an important thing to consider. Burnout, again, the unilateral identity, something to be said about that, being really tied to her sport. She doesn't take breaks. Burnout is definitely a key concern there. And then athletic coping skills inventory. I want to know how she copes with anxiety. Priority list with Erin, self-confidence, anxiety, perfectionism. Measures to evaluate after the fact to make sure we're doing well is redo the assessments. The athletic coping skills inventory, the goal orientation. There's so many of these we could do. Perfectionistic one. There's a SMPS2. There's another anxiety one we can do. We can do a mental health evaluation, again, to see if that's an issue. We can see if the consultant there or the therapist, whoever evaluated her, sees improvement. We have to triangulate. We have to look at observation in sessions. We have to see if she's improving her sessions. We have to see if she's improving the questionnaires. So follow up with parents, triangulate, observe how she's doing, and watching her practices, and see if the questionnaires are improving from the preliminary time that we gave it to her to now. Here's my references. I hope you enjoy. I will also upload it so you can see everything in more detail. Thank you for your time, and sorry for going a little bit over. I'll see you next time for the team case study.